Picture a palace, not some European ruin mouldering on a hill. A brand new palace, 90 feet of carved limestone standing on the most expensive dirt in America, with a marble staircase wide enough to drive a carriage up and a dining room ceiling painted by Frenchmen who are shipped across the Atlantic like crates of wine. Now fill it with orchids in February, add a bathtub cut from a single block of onyx, a bronze front door that weighs as much as a horse, and a dinner table that seats 50 beneath $600 worth of roses that will be dead by Thursday. That's Fifth Avenue, New York City, in 1887. The richest street on earth, and in every sense that matters, the coldest. A place where a man could lose a railroad before lunch and buy a Rembrandt before supper. A place where the family upstairs spends more on cut flowers in a single month than the girl carrying their coal will earn in 4 years of 5 o'clock mornings. And the girl is the story tonight. We're going back there. Not as guests. Nobody's inviting you, and you couldn't afford the gloves anyway. We're going in the other way. Down the area steps, under the sidewalk, through the servant's door, into the half of the house the family will never see, and could not run a single day without. Because every palace on that avenue was really 2 houses wearing one skin. The house that woke at 9 to hot rooms, hot water, hot rolls, and the house that woke at 4:30 in the dark to make all of that happen. 1 year, 1 house, 1 pair of hands, and 1 stretch of clock, lived over and over until you know it the way she knew it, the hours between 4:30 and 9 in the morning. That's the whole story tonight. The hidden half day that made the visible day possible. When we leave those hours, it will only be for a minute, and only because the morning itself sent us on an errand. So I make these history stories, and honestly, I still have no clue whether anyone actually sleeps to them, or whether you're all just weirdos who like hearing about a teenage girl sifting yesterday's cinders through a wire screen at 5 a.m. so that a millionaire will never once in his life find out what a cold room feels like. Either way, subscribe if you want. Get comfortable. Here we go. One honest thing first, because this channel keeps its account square. The house tonight is real in its bones. The timetable is real. It survives in the household manuals of the day, printed schedules that told a great house exactly which servant rose at which minute and what her hands should be doing in the dark. The wages are real. The coal is real by the ton. The breakfast menus are real. And the storm at the end of this story is real, down to the date, the wind, and the temperature. But the eyes I'm going to lend you belong to no single person who ever lived. The girl you're about to become is stitched together from hundreds of girls, Irish, German, Scandinavian, American, who carried the scuttles and blacked the grates of that avenue and left almost nothing behind in writing, because nobody asked them to. The rooms are real, the rules are real, the dates are real, the girl is every girl. And whenever I have to guess at something the record doesn't show, I'll tell you I'm guessing. That's the deal. Now, down the stairs. Quietly. Your hands are already black. That's the first thing. Before thought. Before your own name. Before you could even tell someone where you are. Your hands are working, and they are black to the wrist. And the smell of the black lead is in the back of your throat. Oily, mineral, a little like pencil shavings and a little like the inside of a stove, mixed with the flat, dead smell of last night's ashes. You are kneeling on a folded piece of drugget on the marble hearth of the library, in the dark, and your right hand is moving a stiff brush over the iron bars of a cold grate in small, hard circles, and it has apparently been doing this for some time without you. That's what 4:30 every day of your life does to a body. The hands wake first. The girl catches up. The library is black as a coal cellar. You work by a single stub of candle set inside the fender, where its light can't be seen from the street, because the manuals actually commanded in print, that no housemaid's light should show in the front rooms before dawn. The great house must appear to sleep. The great house must never be seen becoming itself. So you kneel in a cave of leather books you will never be permitted to read, in a room kept warmer for their bindings than your attic is kept for you, and you polish iron in the dark by a hidden flame like a woman committing a crime. It is 2 minutes to 5 o'clock. You know this without any watch. You will never own a watch, because the milk wagons are going by outside. You can hear them through the shutters, the slow iron tires on the granite pavement, the chink of can lids, the driver's low voice to his horse. The milk wagons pass at 5 minutes to 5 every morning, as reliable as anything in your world. More reliable, in fact, than the clock in the servants' hall. But we'll get to what's wrong with that clock. It's worth getting to. Welcome to Fifth Avenue in the spring of 1887. Welcome to the basement, the back stairs, and the dark. You're kneeling in a mansion a few doors below the southern edge of Central Park. Limestone front, 5 stories and a basement, some 90 feet of the most expensive frontage in the Western Hemisphere. 2 blocks south of you stands the white chateau that the Vanderbilts built in 1882, the one the newspapers never stopped describing. The family whose grate you are blacking is not quite that rich. Nobody is quite that rich, but they are rich in the way that ends conversations. Railroad money, then bank money on top of it, then money that simply makes more money while everyone sleeps. Everyone, that is, except you. Your name is Nora. Nora Buckley. You are 19 years old, 3rd housemaid, and you came to New York in October of 1886 from a stone-floored cottage in County Clare, Ireland, with 1 canvas bag, your mother's rosary, and a piece of paper bearing the address of a cousin in Brooklyn who, it turned out, had moved. Your second week in America, the whole city went insane over a copper woman standing in the harbour. They unveiled her on the 28th of October 1886 in fog and cannon smoke, and you watched the crowds pour down the avenues and understood exactly none of it, because you had $4 left and no situation. By November you had this one, 3rd housemaid, 5th Avenue, $14 a month, plus your bed, plus your board, plus 2 print dresses you paid for out of the $14. Back home, everyone said America would swallow you whole. They weren't wrong. They just didn't say it would do it before sunrise, in a room full of books, on your knees. And listen. Before you feel 1 ounce of self-pity, understand what this job is worth, because you understand it every minute of every day. $14 a month with bed and board is more cash money than your father ever saw in a season. Half of it goes home to Claire in a paper envelope, and that envelope is the roof on your mother's house. There are 10 girls at the agency on 6th Avenue this morning, this exact morning, who would take your place by noon and thank God for it. If you are careless, if you are cheeky, if you are visible, if you break so much as a teacup and are caught, you can be turned out by supper without a character. And a servant turned out without a character reference in New York in 1887 doesn't get another house on this avenue. She gets the shirtwaist factory if she's lucky. She gets worse if she isn't. So the fear is simple, and it kneels on the hearth with you every morning. Don't be slow, don't be seen, don't break anything, hold on. 'Cause here is the strange other half of it. The half you'd never confess to the priest because it sounds like pride. At this hour, this palace is yours. Before the family wakes, the house belongs to you. From 4:30 until 9, every marble inch of it, the staircase, the gilt drawing room, the dining room with its painted ceiling, the library smelling of leather and cold ash, all of it is worked, warmed, lit, dusted, fed, and brought to life by you and 7 other people the family could not reliably pick out of a crowd. The people upstairs believe, in some untested corner of their minds, that the house simply does this itself, that rooms are naturally warm, that water is naturally hot, that silver is naturally bright. 8 pairs of hands maintain that belief the way a priest maintains a mystery, and the first commandment of the work is that the hands must never be seen doing it. You were not allowed to be seen doing the work that kept the house alive. Remember that line. This whole year turns on it. The grate in front of you is your 3rd of the morning, and you have 4 more before 6 o'clock. 7 grates are yours. Library, drawing room, morning room, dining room, the master's study, the front hall, the breakfast room. And every one of them must be a lit, drawing, respectable fire before a single member of the family opens an eye. 12 fires burn in this house on a cold morning, counting the kitchen range, the laundry and the bedrooms, and every one of them was born in the dark, secretly, like this one is about to be. Your knees have long since stopped reporting the cold of the marble through the drugget. Your fingers are another matter. The iron bars pull the heat out of them, and the black lead has worked into every crack of your knuckles, into the whorls of your fingertips, a grey-black stain that soap will not fully lift. Not today, not Sunday, not ever, as far as you can tell. You could be handed a Bible in court and they'd read your trade off your hands before you swore a word. Down at the servants' table they can tell any girl's work blindfolded. The laundress by the bleach smell, the kitchen maid by the burns on her wrists, the housemaid by the black hands and the raw knees. Your body is a uniform under the uniform. You finish the bars, take up the burnishing leather, and bring the iron to a low dull shine. Not bright. Bright is vulgar. Mr. Greer has opinions about bright. And then you build the fire. And you build it the way Miss Kearney taught you your first shaking week in this house. Because there is a right way. And in this house the right way is the only way that exists. Cinders first. Last night's cinders, sifted from last night's ashes through the wire screen in your housemaid's box, because a great house wastes nothing it can make a servant save. The good cinders go back into the grate, the fine ash goes down to the dustman, and the halfpenny arithmetic of it would make you laugh if you had breath to spare. A house that will pay $600 for the flowers on one dinner table requires you, by standing order, to sift and reuse the unburnt corners of yesterday's coal. Then the paper twisted into loose knots. Then the kindling laid crosswise with air underneath. A fire is built out of air, Miss Kearney says. The coal is only there to keep the air company. Then the small coals, one at a time by hand, from the scuttle you carried up 63 steps from the cellar. You know it is 63 steps. Your knees count them for you. Twice a trip, a dozen trips a morning. Then the match. The little bloom of sulphur. That hot blue smell that lives in your nose all morning. The flame walking the paper. The kindling beginning to talk to itself. A small ticking, snapping conversation. The first real light in the room. For about a minute, this is the only fire lit above stairs, and you are the only living soul who knows the library exists. You allow yourself, every morning, this is your one theft. 5 seconds of holding your black hands out to it. 5 seconds. Then the candle is out, the drugget is folded, the box is packed, and you are gone. because the fire must never be seen being born. By the time anyone of the family's blood walks into this room, hours from now, the fire will simply exist, ancient and self-evident, as if it burned here all night, as if it burns here always, the way the sun burns. Fires are like servants that way, Miss Kearney says. They must simply be. Nobody upstairs is to wonder how. And this grate, this particular grate, the library grate, is the one you watch like a sick child, because it has a flaw the family knows nothing about and you know everything about. On an east wind it will not draw. Something in the throat of that chimney, some crook or ledge the builders left in it, catches the wind off the East River and breathes the smoke straight back down into the room, and a library full of smoke at 8:30 is the kind of catastrophe that ends a housemaid. There is a trick to it. A lit newspaper held high in the throat of the flue to warm the air and coax the draught upward until the chimney remembers its manners. Miss Kearney showed you silently once, with the air of a woman handing over contraband. You have used it perhaps 30 mornings since. You will use it again on a morning you cannot yet imagine, when that trick will matter more than anything else in this house. But that's March. This is April. 1 grate down, 4 to go. It is 5 o'clock exactly, and above your head, through 4 floors of Persian carpet and silk wallpaper and sleeping money, the family has not moved. The house is yours for 4 more hours. Let me show ye how it runs. Run the morning backward first, just once, so you can see the machine whole. Because a Fifth Avenue morning is not a sunrise. It is a relay race run in the dark, in strict order of rank, and the order never varies, because the manuals commanded it, and Mr. Greer enforces it, and God himself, you suspect, checks the list. 4:30. Danny wakes. Danny is the hall boy, 13 years old, undersized, ears like jug handles, a 5 points orphan with an accent that could strip paint. And he sleeps in the basement in a windowless slip of a room beside the butler's pantry, because his bed is a burglar alarm. That's not a joke. The hall boy of a great house sleeps next to the plate safe on purpose. His job description includes being woken by robbery. Danny wakes to no bell and no knock, by some animal clock inside him, and he lights the fire in the servants' hall, sets the big kettle on, hauls up the first scuttles from the coal cellar, and starts on the boots. A house this size sends down a dozen pairs of boots and shoes a night, and every pair must be blacked and shone by 7. Danny's hands are as stained as yours. Danny's ambition, which he will tell you at any hour, invited or not, is to be a footman, because footmen wear livery and get tips and are, in his words, practically gentlemen. Danny is the first heartbeat of the day. When you come downstairs in the dark, his fire is why the servants' hall is not a tomb. 4:45, the housemaids. That's you and the 2 above you, plus Josie. You sleep on the 5th floor, in the attics, under the roof. The family sleeps in the middle of the house. The servants sleep pressed against the weather, in a room you share with Josie, the scullery maid, who is 15 and cries in her sleep and would die for you. 2 iron beds, 1 washstand, 1 window looking down the air shaft, 1 chest of drawers, and in winter the water in your jug freezes hard enough that you learn to break it with the handle of your hairbrush without thinking of it as strange. In April it's merely cold. You wake at the knock. The head housemaid raps every door once, no words, at 4:45. And you're dressed in 6 minutes. Shift, stays, stockings, the striped print dress of morning work, the coarse apron, the cap that eats your hair. There is a looking glass the size of a prayer book nailed by the door. You use it to make sure the cap is straight, and that is all you use it for. Vanity. At 4:45 is not a temptation available to the human body. 5 o'clock. The fires, as you've seen. The housemaids scatter through the dark house with their boxes and scuttles, each to her own map of grates. The kitchen maid lights the great range, and lighting that range is an act of engineering, a black iron thing 12 feet across with flues and dampers like a ship's boiler, and if she builds it wrong the ovens will sulk at 300 degrees all day, and the cook will make the whole basement pay for it. Josie starts on the sculleries and the copper pots. The laundress on wash days is already up to her elbows by 5:30. 5:30. Mrs. Fenwick, the cook, descends, and the kitchen day truly begins. But the kitchen is its own kingdom, and we'll enter it properly in a minute. 6 o'clock. The footman. Thomas, 5'11" in his stockings, and perfectly aware that he was hired for exactly that number, comes down whistling under his breath, strips to his shirt sleeves, and starts on the lamps and the pantry brasses. Thomas is 23, beautiful the way a shop window is beautiful, and vain enough that Danny keeps a private tally of how many times a day Thomas checks himself in the blade of a knife. You'll want to laugh at Thomas. Wait. He'll earn better than laughter before this year is out. 6:30 and last of the early house. Mr. Greer, the butler. Mr. Greer is 61 years old, English, and has been in service for 47 of those years, which he will mention approximately never because Mr. Greer does not discuss Mr. Greer. He rises last of the servants and first of the officers. The butler and the housekeeper are the government of this house, and government does not carry coal. By the time his pantry door clicks open at 6:30, you could set a ship's chronometer by him. Collar, coat, and the day's first inspection of the silver. When Mr. Greer says the word standards, and he says it the way other men say scripture, the entire basement stands a little straighter, including, you have noticed, the cat. And above all of it, at no fixed minute, because her authority has no fixed minute, Miss Kearney, the housekeeper. Keys at her waist, the still room, the china closet, the linen presses, the store cupboards. Every lock in this house answers to the ring on Miss Kearney's belt. She's somewhere past 50, Ulster-born, straight as a poker, and about as warm to the touch, and she runs the female half of this house with a quiet that is worse than shouting. Her praise is silence. Her displeasure is also silence, but a different silence, and every woman under this roof can tell the two apart at 40 feet. She frightened you witless your first month. She is also, though it will take you this entire year and one broken piece of porcelain to learn it, the nearest thing to mercy this house employs. That's the machine. 8 names below stairs. Danny, Josie, the kitchen maid and the maids you nod to. Thomas, Mrs. Fenwick, Miss Kearney, Mr. Greer, plus a charwoman on Mondays, the laundress, the grooms in the mews around the corner who are their own tribe entirely. 8 people, up before the sun, so that 4 people and their guests may live like weather, warm, fed, effortless, and entirely unaware of the plumbing of their own comfort. Now, the clock. I promised you the clock. On the wall of the servants' hall above the long deal table hangs a plain drum clock, and that clock is a liar. It runs 5 minutes fast. It has run exactly 5 minutes fast for as long as anyone under this roof can remember. And here is the thing that tells you everything about service in a great house. Every single person in that basement knows it lies, and every single person obeys it anyway. Breakfast is at 7 by that clock. Prayers, when the family holds them, Muster at 7:50 by that clock. You have watched grown women rise and run at a bell governed by 5 minutes that do not exist. Once, your first winter, you asked Danny why nobody just moved the hand back. Danny looked at you like you'd proposed burning the house down. "Mr. Greer keeps that clock," he said, "and nobody touches Mr. Greer's clock. Why 5 minutes? Nobody knows. Nobody asks. It is simply one more law of a world built entirely out of laws nobody explains. The clock lies, the lie is deliberate, and the lie is somehow, in a way you can't put words around, part of what holds the whole day up. You will find out why." On a quiet morning at the far end of this story, somebody finally asks him, and the answer is the kind of thing you'll want to have waited for. Back to your knees, back to 5 o'clock April, the dark. After the library, the drawing room, the grandest of your greats, white marble carved with grapes, and above it a room you clean every day and have never seen by daylight with the family in it. Silk walls the colour of the inside of a shell, a ceiling of painted clouds, gilt chairs no servant may sit on, and no family member does sit on, and over the mantel a portrait of the mistress at 25, painted in Paris, wearing pearls that live, Danny swears, in a bank vault on Broadway, and travelled to the house, under guard like a prisoner of state. You black that grate kneeling under her painted eyes every morning, and every morning the same thought arrives on schedule, your little private catechism. She has never seen this room cold. In her entire life that woman has never once entered this room and found it cold, and she never will, because of you. And she does not know, and she must not know, that there is anything to know. And when I say the family must not know, I need you to understand what that means in a great American house in 1887. Because it is not shyness and it is not modesty. It is a system, printed and taught. The manuals commanded that morning work in the family's rooms be finished before the family rose, and that a servant surprised at her work should make herself, this is the actual instruction, as unnoticeable as possible. In practice, in this house, it means the rules you now keep without thinking. You use the back stairs, always. The great staircase's marble has never once felt your foot on an ordinary day. You pass through the door covered in green baize, that padded, silent door that separates the two houses inside this house. And you know exactly which side of your life is which by what your hand touches. Cold mahogany on their side, wool-soft baize on yours. If a bell rings, you answer it invisibly. The answer appears, the answerer does not. And if, God forbid the phrase is automatic by now, if a member of the family should appear in a corridor while you're in it, you do not greet them. You do not smile. You step to the wall, you turn your face to it, you stand absolutely still, and you wait to be passed. You make yourself a piece of furniture, because that is the transaction. This house pays $14 a month for a girl who can become, on demand, not there. The first time Miss Kearney drilled you in it, actually drilled you in the back corridor playing the part of the mistress herself with her heels ringing on the boards, you thought you would die of the strangeness of it. Face to the wallpaper, breath held, while another human being's footsteps go by behind you, like a tide deciding whether to take you. 6 months later, you have turned to the wall so many times that your body does it before your mind is consulted. That's the part nobody warns you about. Not that the rule is cruel, but that you get good at it. Invisible is safe, Josie says. Josie, 15, who learned it in a harder house than this one. Invisible is safe. It is the truest sentence in the basement. and you will hear it again on the far side of this year, on a morning when the whole meaning of it turns inside out. Great, great, great. Morning room, dining room, study. By 5:45, your scuttle has gone up and down those 63 cellar steps, enough times that your right shoulder has its familiar deep burn, the one that will still be there, faintly, on Sundays, at Mass, when you lift your hand to bless yourself. The coal for one hard winter day in this house runs close to a ton, one house, one day. And while April asks less, April still asks. Somewhere below 5th Avenue there is a coal cellar under the sidewalk, filled through a brass-lidded hole in the pavement by shouting men with shoots, and it is one of your private amusements that the gentlemen strolling the avenue walk over that brass lid all day without once wondering what it is. The whole street is like that. The palaces stand on cellars, the cellars stand on scuttles, and the scuttles stand on shoulders like yours, and the entire arrangement is designed meticulously to be forgotten. At 6 o'clock, as you finish the study, comes the sound you have privately decided is the real church bell of this house. Far below, faint through the floors, the clang of the first hot water cans being set on the stove, which means the kitchen is fully awake, which means it is time I took you down there, because everything above stairs is only scenery. The kitchen is the engine room, and the kitchen at dawn is the best show on 5th Avenue, and nobody with money will ever see it. 63 steps down. Mind the turn at the bottom. The light gets warmer as you go, and then the smell arrives, all the smells at once, and after the ash and black lead of the front rooms, it is like walking from a funeral into a harvest. Bread first. Always bread first. The yeast went to work before anyone did. Set to sponge overnight in a covered crock, and by 6 the first loaves are proving on the rack above the range in a warm fog of that round, beery, living smell that you will associate with safety for the rest of your life. Under the bread, coffee, freshly ground by Danny in the mill, clamped to the table edge. A smell so good it feels like theft just to breathe it, since not one drop of the good coffee is for you. Under the coffee, smoke and hot iron from the range, scoured copper, damp scrubbed deal, the cold water smell of the scullery stones, and this morning, because it is Friday, fish packed in seaweed in a crate by the door, breathing out the whole North Atlantic every time someone walks past it. The kitchen is 30 feet long. The range fills one entire wall, black-leaded to a soft gleam. Josie's knuckles did that, with a fire in its heart that has been coaxed, dampered and argued with since 5:15. Overhead, on iron racks, hang the copper pans, 60 of them at your last count, from a pot you could bathe a child in down to a saucepan the size of a teacup, everyone burnished because Mrs. Fenwick can read the state of a kitchen's soul in the state of its copper. The long table down the middle is white as bone from a decade of scrubbing. And at the head of that table, sleeves already rolled, stands the queen of the underworld herself, Mrs. Fenwick. There is no Mr. Fenwick. The Mrs. is a title of office, like Colonel, and about as advisable to question. She's 50-some, broad, red forearmed, Yorkshire-born, and she runs this kitchen the way an engineer runs an engine room. No wasted motion, no wasted breath, no second warnings. She has a daughter in Ohio, married to a man Mrs. Fenwick describes only as adequate, and a grandchild she has seen twice. A portion of her wages goes west every month, the way a portion of yours goes east, which is a thing you know and never mention, the same way she knows it of you and never mentions it. The first morning you ever stood in her kitchen, frightened, useless, and 8 days off the boat, she looked you over exactly once, handed you a bowl of porridge without a word, and pointed at a stool with her chin. You have loved her ever since with the particular ferocity you owe to people who feed you before they know your name. At 6:10 comes the thunder. 2 blocks of Hudson River ice, £50 apiece. Down the area steps on the iceman's leather-caped shoulder. The Knickerbocker Company's wagon works this street at dawn, the horse leaning into the traces, the tongs squealing against the block. The ice was cut up river last winter at Rockland Lake and the frozen reaches above the Palisades, stored under sawdust in barn-sized ice houses, and floated down by barge. There are men whose whole trade is winter itself, harvesting a frozen river with saws the length of your body so that in August, in this basement, butter will sit hard and milk will keep sweet in the sink-lined icebox. £100 a day, this house. The iceman's name you have never learned. He is the ice, the way the man who reads the gas meter is the gas. He tips his cap to Mrs. Fenwick every morning of the world, and every morning of the world Mrs. Fenwick pretends not to see it, which is, Danny insists, basement courtship as practised by the elderly, meaning anyone over 40. And in the iceman's wake, riding the open tail of the market wagon with his boots swinging, Salvatore, 12 or 13, nobody including Sal is certain which, is the market boy who runs the morning orders up from Washington Market, that roaring iron and brick city of food down by the Hudson, where this house's breakfasts are born at 4 a.m. among 200 butchers' stalls and hills of oysters and barrels of terrapin and crates of April strawberries brought up by steamer from the Carolinas. Sal is Sicilian, quick as a sparrow, missing one front tooth since February, and conducts all business at a dead run. He arrives with the day's marketing. This morning it is shad, the first grand shad of the season, silver as a tea service, plus cress, eggs packed in straw, and a paper of morals. Takes his tip of a nickel, and whatever heel of yesterday's loaf Mrs. Fenwick has no room for, which is a fiction, because a woman who commands that larder has room for anything, and is gone again with his boots barely touching the area steps. Mrs. Fenwick, who is not sentimental, who has made suitors of 40 years standing wait in the rain, keeps that heel of bread ready every single morning. You noticed it your first week. You've never said a word. Neither has she. Remember Sal. Remember that he comes every morning, that he is always exactly on time, that he is part of the machine's heartbeat. Because there is a morning coming, at the black end of this story's winter, when the heel of bread will sit on the table untaken, and the silence where that boy should be will be the loudest thing in the room. 7 o'clock, by the lying clock, is the servant's breakfast, and it is the one island of the morning. 20 minutes, the long table, the whole below-stairs world in its ordained places, Mr. Greer at the head, Miss Kearney at his right, Mrs. Fenwick at his left, then Thomas, then the housemaids in order of rank, which puts you below the Sultan across from Danny, with Josie at the foot. Porridge, bread and butter, tea stewed strong enough to trot a mouse across, and on lucky mornings the broken ends of yesterday's bacon. You eat fast because the bells own you, and you eat in a low hum of talk that dies wherever Mr. Greer's eye lands. This is where the house's news lives. Which of the family is in what temper, what the papers say, what the visiting valets and ladies' maids let slip. It is the nearest thing you have to a newspaper, a parliament, and a family council, all in 20 minutes, standing to clear before the tea is cold in the pot. and then the water. 6:45 to 8, the water rounds, and I want to take you through this properly because of everything you do before 9 o'clock. This is the piece that would most astonish the people asleep upstairs, if they ever thought about it, which is the point of the whole performance. They never have to. There is running water in this house. Pipes, taps, even bathrooms. The Croton Aqueduct has fed New York since 1842, and a Fifth Avenue mansion in 1887 has plumbing finer than most palaces in Europe. But a tap gives water merely warm. The boiler is temperamental, and the family's morning ritual demands better than pipes. It demands the can. Polished brass and copper cans, 3 gallons each, filled at the kitchen boiler until they steam, wrapped in a towel and carried 25 pounds and a little more, live weight that shifts and swings against your thigh, up the back stairs to the bedroom floors on a schedule exact to the quarter hour. The master's dressing room at 7 sharp, because the master shaves early. The mistress at 8, not 1 minute before, because the mistress must not be woken by so much as a floorboard until her bell says otherwise. The young ladies at 8:15. Guests by their written preferences, which Miss Kearney keeps in a book. The carry is its own learned art. 2 flights, 42 steps on the back run, the can held out from the body so it doesn't scald through your skirts, your free hand on the rail, your feet finding the quiet edge of each tread. The 4th step from the top of the 2nd flight speaks if you hit it square. So nobody has hit it square since before your time. The knowledge passes from housemaid to housemaid like a psalm. Then the top corridor, carpeted, silent, the row of white-painted doors with the family sleeping behind them like the dead in a well-kept churchyard. You set the can down on its towel outside the dressing-room door, straighten it so the handle faces out. The manuals commanded even this, the handle turned ready for the valet's hand, and you knock. Once. Soft. Not to wake, to inform. The knock says, 7 o'clock exists, and it is warm, and it is outside your door, and then you vanish. That is the whole choreography. The water appears, cooling by the second, proof that someone was just there, and no one is ever there. Some morning, standing in that corridor with your emptied arms singing, half a yard of oak door between you and the second richest sleep on the avenue, you have the strangest thought a servant can have, and you have it quietly, because it goes nowhere good. They will wake to warmth in 12 rooms, and every degree of it was carried. Nothing here is magic. It is girls. It has been girls all along. Then down the 42 steps and up again with the next can. 4 cans, 5 on guest mornings. Your palms have a band of callus at the base of the fingers, smooth and yellow as soap. That is the exact width of a brass can handle. Doctors' hands show the scalpel, they say. Yours show the water. While you climb, the rest of the machine is doing its own dance. Thomas is through the dining room with his lamp tray and his chamois, and the gas brackets are trimmed and the girandoles bright. The second housemaid has the front hall, the marble washed, the brass letter slot and bell pull polished, the great bronze doors hinges given their drop of oil. Danny is on the sidewalk itself, because a mansion's morning face is public property, and the manuals commanded the flags swept and the area railings wiped before 8, so that the first Knickerbocker matron to roll by in her brougham shall see the house standing at attention, and in the butler's pantry, in a fortress of green bays and locked drawers, Mr. Greer is laying out silver for the family breakfast by rules older than the Republic. Which pieces come out for which meal, in which order they are handled, chamois only, never bare fingers on the finished surface. the rouge powder and the soft brushes for Fridays, every fork counted out, and this is the part that took your breath the first time you saw it, counted back. Every piece, every meal, every day. The count is not suspicion, Mr. Greer says. The count is certainty. In his pantry, those are different religions, and only one of them is his. You catch some mornings through the pantry's half door a thing you're not supposed to catch. Mr. Greer holds a teaspoon up to the gaslight, turning it, and his right hand, that steady liturgical right hand, trembles, only a little. Only at certain angles first thing before the day has warmed him. He sets the spoon down, flexes the fingers slowly like a man pulling on a glove, and picks it up again. And it is steady. 61 years old, 47 of them in service, and a butler's whole value lives in his hands the way a housemaid's lives in her knees. You have seen it perhaps 5 times. You have told no one. You're almost sure Miss Kearney has seen it too, because lately, on the heaviest mornings, she finds reasons for Thomas to be in that pantry. The inventory wants checking, the young man needs training, and Mr. Greer, who misses nothing, accepts the fiction with a courtesy that is its own kind of heartbreak. Remember the tremble. Like the bread, like the boy, like the chimney that won't draw on an east wind, it is a small thing now. Small things are what this year is going to be made of, right up until the morning it is made of one enormous thing. 8 o'clock, 1 hour left, and the last hour before the family wakes is the strangest of all, because it is the hour of the sun, and the sun in this house is managed like everything else. You would think daylight at least came free. It does not. Daylight fades silk. The drawing-room walls are hung with silk woven in Lyons, France, silk that crossed an ocean, silk that cost, Miss Kearney once let fall in the tone of a woman quoting a casualty list, $11 the yard, and there are some 200 yards of it on those walls. Direct morning sun, day upon day, will bleach a stripe down that silk the way it bleaches a stripe down a farmer's neck. And so the manuals commanded, and Miss Kearney enforces, the rotation, which curtains are drawn back full, which held to half, which blinds lowered to the inch, room by room, month by month, tracked against the sun's own calendar as it climbs from its low, southern winter road to its high summer one. There is a card in the housemaid's pantry, written in Miss Kearney's upright hand, that is nothing but this: a schedule for the sun. In January, the morning room may drink all the light it likes. By May, you are holding the drawing room to half blinds before 8, and the great sashes get their awnings like ladies putting on veils. You climb behind the curtains in your stocking feet on the window seats, working the cords, easing the rings along the poles so they don't cry out, and the light comes into each room exactly as prescribed, in bars and half bars, warm and rationed. Sunrise, in this house, is a housemaid's chore. You have stood behind 6 feet of French silk, drawing it back by degrees on an April morning, and watched Fifth Avenue come up gold out of the grey, the water carts laying the dust, the first hansoms, the park trees 2 blocks north catching fire crown by crown, and you have thought, I am the only one in this house who saw that. They pay $14 a month and they throw in the sunrise, and they don't even know they're doing it. Now the breakfast room. Now the last act. Family breakfast in this house is at 9, and it is the smallest performance of the day, which still makes it a performance. The room faces east, done in yellow with a round table, round on the mistress's instruction, because breakfast is informal, a word that here means only 4 kinds of fork. By 8:30 the cloth is laid. white damask ironed to a gloss you can see your shadow in. The silver stands at its stations, and down the sideboard goes the architecture the age itself invented for this meal. The chafing dishes, silver-domed spirit lamps lit beneath, little blue flames you light with a paper spill and adjust to a whisper, a row of small warm altars waiting. Because a Gilded Age breakfast does not arrive on a tray like a lodger's. It stands ready, hot, indifferent to whether the family comes at 9 or past, and what stands ready this April morning is what the manuals and the menu books of the day prescribe for a family of quality. Oatmeal with thick cream, the season's fruit, eggs shirred in their little dishes, broiled shad with the roe, lamb chops under their dome, potatoes in cream, hot rolls and cornbread wrapped in a napkin, marmalade, coffee and chocolate on their burners, for 4 people. You know, because you've heard Mrs. Fenwick reckon it at the kitchen table with a pencil, what the raw marketing for one such breakfast costs. Between $4 and $5 most mornings, a week and a quarter of your wages, eaten in 40 minutes. And the shad barely touched because the master is in a hurry, and the mistress takes only chocolate and a roll upstairs in bed. What comes back down the dumbwaiter goes by rule into the servant's dinner or the charity basket at the area door, where every morning by 10 there are women waiting for it, shawled, silent, facing the railings. That is the arithmetic of the avenue, and you do it without bitterness now, which either means you're growing wise or growing used to it, and you try not to wonder which. Upstairs the surplus, downstairs the salvage, and on the sidewalk the shawls. And the flowers, since we're counting. Every Tuesday and Friday the florist's cart stops at the area gate and hands down the standing order. Roses out of season, carnations, ferns, lilies for the hall in their season, orchids when the mistress entertains. Danny saw the florist's monthly bill once riding up with the other tradesmen's books for the master's secretary, and reported the figure below stairs in the voice of a boy reporting a sea monster. Some months, in the season, $300. On the morning after a great dinner it could be $600 in a single night's bloom. Say it plainly the way Danny said it. The flowers of one dinner party equal 3.5 years of your wages. You have carried those roses down on the 3rd morning, browned and loose, a whole armful of them into the ash barrels, and stood there in the area holding $40 of dead roses in your 2 black hands, and felt the arithmetic close over your head like water. That's not a complaint. It's a measurement. This channel deals in measurements, and there is no truer one on 5th Avenue than a housemaid's armful of dead money. One more piece of the machine, the smallest and the most absolute, the tray note. The mistress does not come down to give her orders. The mistress wakes at 8 to her chocolate tray. Thomas carries it to her door. Her own maid takes it in. And on that tray, beside the cup, lies a small silver salver. And on the salver the day's answer comes down, a note card, written in bed in pencil, in the mistress's fast slanting hand. The dinner for Thursday enlarged to 12. The blue room to be made up. The carriage at 3. Miss Kearney meets that card at the bottom of the stairs the way a captain meets his sealed orders, and from those few penciled lines the entire day below stairs is rigged like a ship. It is the only handwriting of the mistresses you've ever seen, and in 6 months of mornings, your whole American life so far, the cards have said everything a house can need, and never once contained a single word addressed to the people who would do it. Not a name, not a thank you. Orders travel down, nothing travels up. File that away, next to the bread and the boy and the chimney and the tremble in a butler's hand. There is a morning coming when a card will travel down that salver with something on it no card has carried before, and you will be in the room to hear it read. 5 minutes to 9. The blue flames whisper under the domes. The coffee breathes. The house stands finished, warmed, lit, swept, silvered, flowered, its sun let in by the inch. A stage set with no visible stagehands, because the stagehands are already through the baize door, out of sight, gone. In the front hall the great clock, the true clock, the family's clock, which is permitted to tell the truth, begins to strike 9, and overhead, at last, the floor speaks. A footstep, a door. A bell rings in the basement, one of the 40 numbered bells on the board by the kitchen stairs, and the little flag above the wire trembles. The mistress's room. The day of the visible house has begun. Your day, the real day, the day this whole story lives in, is already 4.5 hours old, and it is over. Everything after 9 o'clock is somebody else's story. The house has changed hands. It will be yours again tomorrow at 4:30. That is one morning, the standard issue, the bones under all the others. Now watch what a year does to it. Because a Fifth Avenue morning was never the same creature twice. It changed with the seasons like a field changes, and the seasons of a great house were not spring, summer, autumn, winter. They were the season, the departure, the empty house, the return, and the deep cold. And at the far end of the deep cold this particular year, something was waiting that not one soul in that kitchen, not Greer with his 47 years, not Fenwick who can smell weather in her risen dough, not the almanac, not the Weather Bureau of the United States itself, saw coming. But it's April yet. Let the year turn properly. Let it come the way it came to you, one morning at a time. Through April and May the light moves its wake time earlier, and the mornings loosen just a little at the seams. There are grates you stop lighting, the study first, then the morning room, and each dead grate is an hour handed back to the great spring cleaning, which is its own annual war. Carpets up and beaten in the yard by the ton of dust, pictures down, chandeliers dismantled, crystal by crystal into baths of soda water. Every book in that library you may not read taken out, dusted and put back precisely one book at a time. Your knees trade the hearth for the step-ladder. The black-lead stain on your hands begins, for the only stretch of the year, to fade toward grey. And the talk at the servants' breakfast turns, every morning a little more, toward the one word that rules the below-stairs calendar, the way Easter rules the priests, Newport. Because in the last week of June the family leaves. All of fashionable New York leaves. The avenue empties northward and seaward like a tide going out, to Newport, to Saratoga, to Europe, and the great houses are handed over to canvas and camphor and skeleton staffs. And the mornings of the departure, the last 10 mornings of June 1887, are the wildest of the whole year, the machine running double, packing a palace into boxes before breakfast. Those mornings you're up at 4, not 4:30, and the house at 5 is a landscape of open trunks, Saratoga trunks with domed lids, flat steamer trunks, hat boxes stacked like drums, and the corridors smell of tissue paper, cedar, and the mistress's travelling scent instead of ash. The packing itself, the gowns, is the lady's maid's sacrament, and you don't touch it. Your war is the house. Because the house does not simply stand empty for 10 weeks. The house is embalmed, and embalming is housemaid's work, and it happens before the family wakes, room by room in this order. Carpets last, chandeliers first, because the manuals commanded even the order of a house's going to sleep. You climb the ladder and case the chandeliers in tarlatan bags, tied at the crown, so they hang all summer like great dim wasps' nests. You fold the curtains, that lion silk, drawn through your hands cool and heavy as poured water, with camphor and pepper paper in the folds against moth, holland covers over every chair, every sofa, every gilt and silk and velvet thing, tied at the ankles like shrouds, the pictures sheeted, the mirrors sheeted, which changes the rooms more than anything, all those drowned windows that used to double the light. Strips of paper laid along the window sashes against dust. The Ormolu clock stopped, deliberately stopped, its key laid beside it, because Miss Kearney does not permit a clock to run tellingly in an empty room, and if you think that's superstition, you have not stood alone in a shrouded drawing room at 5 a.m. and heard a clock ticking to nobody. You did that once. You stopped the clock yourself the same minute and told her after, and Miss Kearney looked at you with what in another woman would have been a smile and said only, "Quite right. On the last morning of June the family goes. 9 trunks on the vans by 7:30. The mistress's roses cut and crated for the boat. The master on the sidewalk at 8 in his summer grey, checking his watch against a house he will not think of again until October. The New York, Newport and Old Colony boat leaves from its Hudson pier at 5:30 in the evening, but this house does nothing at the last minute. And when the door closes, that bronze door closing on the whole family at once, there comes over the basement a thing you will never once hear named aloud, because naming it would be a kind of treason, a loosening. Mr. Greer and Thomas go with the family. Mrs. Fenwick follows by the morning boat with her knives wrapped like a surgeon's, and left behind as the skeleton crew, keepers of a shrouded palace, are exactly 4 souls. Miss Kearney, Danny, Josie, you, and now I have to tell you about the empty house mornings, the 10 summer weeks, because in the economy of your year they are what Sundays are to other people, and no history of the Avenue's mansions is honest without them. For 10 weeks every summer, the grandest street in America stood dark and sheeted, guarded and cleaned by a handful of servants, and it belonged to them. You still rise at 5. Miss Kearney's discipline does not summer, but the day is different in its whole grain. 2 fires only, the range banked small and the laundry copper on wash days. No water cans, no chafing dishes. Breakfast for 4 at the kitchen table with the area door standing open to the morning, and this is the part that first summer you could hardly believe was permitted, talk. Danny drilling himself in footman's deportment up and down the passage, with a plate of nothing balanced on his fingertips, narrating himself in the third person in an accent he believes to be Mr. Greer's, and which would get him hanged in Yorkshire. Josie, in the quiet after the porridge, working through the first reader you bought her for 11 cents off a 6th Avenue barrow, because Josie, you discovered in April, cannot read, and has hidden it the way other people hide debts, and the 2 of you now do 20 minutes of letters most summer mornings with the sugar bin for a desk. She learns the way a starved thing eats. By August she can write Josephine daily, in letters like a picket fence, and the morning she first does it unaided she looks at the paper and then at you, with an expression you will think of for the rest of your life every time anyone uses the word rich in your hearing. The work is still work. An embalmed house must be patrolled like a ward, aired room by room on dry mornings, its covers lifted and its dark corners hunted for moth and damp and mice. 60-odd shrouded rooms make their own kind of labour. but it is work without an audience. And that changes what work is. And it has one wage no money house on this street could pay you in winter: the roof. It was Danny who showed you the way up your first July, with the air of a boy disclosing a kingdom, through the attics, past the cisterns, up an iron ladder, out a hatch beside the water tanks, and there, at 6 on a clear summer morning, before the city's coal smoke gets its breath, is New York, all of it, laid out at your feet like a thing on a tray. Come up, mind the sill, look. South. The avenue runs away downtown in a double file of stone palaces. You can see the Vanderbilt Chateau's pale roofs 2 blocks down, and beyond it, spire after spire, the whole island narrowing away into haze with the twin grey towers of the Brooklyn Bridge standing in it like gateposts. The bridge is 4 years old this summer, finished in 1883, and country cousins still walk its promenade just to have done it. East, the yards and mews and the long streets running to the East River and the smoke of Queens beyond. West, over the roofs, a bright seam of Hudson with the masts thick along it. And north. North is the reason you come up. Central Park from above, at 6 in the morning, is a green sea with a floor of mist, 840 acres of it, the reservoirs lying in it like dropped silver. The whole thing man-made within living memory. There are men on this street older than that park, and not one of its designed vistas as good as this accidental one. From a housemaid's roof between 2 water tanks, with your cap off and the harbour wind doing what it likes with your hair. Straight down 7 stories, 5th Avenue itself. A water cart laying the dust, a policeman on the corner with his helmet under his arm, the first stage rattling south half empty. The people down there are the size of your thumbnail, and from up here you cannot tell a millionaire from a milkman, which is, you suspect, the actual reason housemaids are not encouraged onto roofs. You are 19 years old, you own 1 canvas bag, 1 rosary, 2 print dresses and $11 in a tobacco tin, and you are standing on top of the greatest city of the age while it sleeps, holding a cup of tea gone cold, with the whole machine below you stopped and sheeted and yours. Barely a cog in that machine, the 3rd housemaid of a house that will forget your name by Christmas of the year you leave it. But you're here. You're in it. The bridge and the park and the copper woman in the harbour south of everything, and you, on the same morning in the same picture. Some mornings that thought is so large you have to hold the railing. It was up there, one white morning in August of 1887 that Miss Kearney found you. You froze, caught, half turned to the wall out of pure trained reflex, which on a rooftop is comedy, and she let it be comedy. You saw it reach her eyes, and instead of sending you down, she stood a while at the parapet herself, keys quiet for once against her skirt, and looked north over the park like a woman reading old letters, and she gave you, unasked, in 6 sentences, the only piece of her own story you would ever get, that she came out of Ulster at 17, that she was 3rd housemaid once in a house she did not name, to people she did not name, and that she had stood on a roof like this one 30-odd years ago and promised herself she would run the next house or die. Then she looked at you the way she looks at linen she's deciding about, and said the thing you're going to carry out of this story, so keep it. Learn everything, Buckley. Learn where every pipe runs and every shilling goes and every temper hides. They own the house. A small motion of her head took in the roof, the shrouded floors below, the whole sleeping street of palaces. But nobody knows a house like the girl who wakes it. That is the one thing they cannot buy off you. That is the thing you will be paid for all your life. Nobody knows a house like the girl who wakes it. You will have cause before this year is out to know exactly how true that is. On a morning when knowing this house will be the difference between a great house standing warm through a catastrophe and a great house going cold like its neighbours. But that morning is 7 months off yet, and the summer doesn't know a thing about it, and neither do you. In the first week of October, the tide turns and comes back in. A telegram first, Mr. Greer's hand relayed through the housekeeper's letter. The family returns Thursday the 6th. The house will be ready. And the mornings of the return are the departure run in reverse and at the double. Shrouds off, chandeliers unbagged crystal by crystal, carpets down, curtains rehung, the silk cool and heavy through your hands again, smelling of camphor now instead of summer. The clocks wound and set, the flowers ordered, the fires proved, 40 bells tested on their wires, and on Thursday at 6 in the evening the bronze door opens and swallows the family, and by Friday at 4:30 in the morning you are on your knees on the library hearth with the black lead brush in your hand, as if the roof and the reader and the green sea of the park had happened to some other girl in some other house. The season comes back with them, and the deep order of the mornings closes over the basement like water over a stone. And it is now, October, November, the house filling with dinners, and the dinners filling the mornings after with wreckage to be cleared before 9, that this story picks up the first of its freight. Because it is on a black morning in the first week of November, at 20 minutes past 6, alone in the butler's pantry corridor with the mistress's chocolate tray, that you break the cup. It happens the way such things always happen, not in a crisis, but in a lull. The mistress's chocolate service is Sèvres, French, older than the house, older than the family's money, a soft paste blue with gilding worn tender at the rim, and it lives in the china closet under Miss Kearney's second smallest key, and every morning 1 cup and 1 saucer travel in your 2 hands along the pantry corridor to be warmed before Thomas carries the tray up. 60 steps of corridor. You've made that walk perhaps 200 times. This particular morning there is a ruck in the drugget where the charwoman turned it, and your heel finds it, and the world does that slow half-second it does. And you catch yourself, you even catch the saucer, and the cup swings against the door jamb with a sound no louder than a knuckle on wood. Tick, that's all. Tick. The handle stays on. But a crack runs from the rim down into the blue like a hair laid on the glaze, and a sliver of porcelain the size of a barley grain lies in your palm. Understand exactly what you are holding at 20 past 6, alone, in the dark of a corridor. A Sèvres cup of that quality cannot be bought on 6th Avenue. Matching it means agents and letters and France, and the pieces of such services are counted the way the silver is counted. Breakage, in this house as in most great houses, is a housemaid's debt, stopped out of wages, docked by the piece, at the piece's value. And the value of this piece is more than your month. That is the good outcome. The bad outcome is the ordinary one everywhere on this avenue, and every girl below stairs knows a girl it happened to. Dismissed for carelessness, and careless, written into the character reference, which is a word that follows a servant from agency to agency like a smell. $14 a month, the envelope to Claire, the roof on your mother's house, all of it, this whole American life you have hauled up 63 steps at a time, balanced on a hairline crack in somebody else's 100-year-old cup. You do not decide. That is the truthful way to tell it. Your hands decide the way they wake before you do. The cup goes to the back of the warming shelf, and a cup from the older, plainer service goes onto the tray. The mistress takes her chocolate half asleep, and a woman who has never wondered how a room gets warm does not audit her own china at 8 in the morning, and the cracked cup wrapped in a square of flannel from your housemaid's box goes that same morning to the one hiding place a third housemaid commands, the top shelf of the housemaid's closet on the 4th floor, behind the jelly moulds that come down twice a year, at Christmas and at Easter. You climb down from the stool with your heart going like a fist on a door, and you go back to your grates, and you say nothing to anyone at all. And now it is in the house. That is what nobody tells you about a hidden thing. It does not lie still. It ticks. Every morning it adds one small cold coin of weight to the first minute of waking. The cup before your feet find the floor, the cup when Miss Kearney's keys go down the corridor past the closet door and do not stop, the cup at Christmas, sharp as a pin, when you realise in church what season the jelly moulds come down for, and spend 3 days inventing reasons to be the girl who fetches them, and move the flannel bundle behind the summer curtain hooks instead, and hate yourself with a completeness that would interest a priest. You even price it, because you are your father's daughter, and fear does arithmetic. At $14 a month, docked by halves, such a cup is 3 months of your envelope. Some mornings, kneeling at the library grate, you catch yourself rehearsing the confession. Miss Kearney, I have to tell you a thing. And every morning the rehearsal ends the same way, with the word careless in a reference letter, and you bank the thought like a fire and go on. Remember where it lies, behind the hooks, in the flannel, in the dark. It has 5 months to wait. Winter comes down on the avenue in the last week of November like a lid on a pot, and the mornings enter their deep cold form, which is the form this whole story has been walking toward. 4:30 in December is night. Full night, stars over the park, the gas jets in the basement passage lit until 8, and the house is a hungrier animal by far. Every grate on your map burns again, and burns harder. The coal sledges come twice a week now, and the ton-a-day arithmetic is no longer a figure of speech. You can hear the house eat, the long roar down the chutes at 7, the cellar filling like a hold. Your hands crack at the knuckles in the cold, and the blacklead gets into the cracks and stings like sin. Josie's chilblains come back with the frost, and she washes copper at 6 in water gone cold with her lips pressed white. Until Mrs. Fenwick, who misses nothing she appears to miss, institutes without comment a rule that the scullery taps are to be run warm from the boiler to spare the pipes. The pipes, she says. Josie's hands thaw against warmed metal, and nobody names what happened, because kindness below stairs travels dressed as procedure. Always, the way the bread heel travels dressed as surplus. The season's great dinners begin, and with them the mornings after, and I will keep the promise the beginning of this story made. You will not see a ballroom tonight, and neither, in any real sense, did she. What the third housemaid sees of a Fifth Avenue dinner for 24 is the next morning's battlefield at 5. The dining room stale with dead candle smoke and cigar, and spilled burgundy gone to vinegar. The cloth a ruin of crumbs and wax. $600 of roses browning in their silver, which you carry down armful by armful to the ash barrels in the black cold of the area, while the hansoms take the last of the avenue's lamplight past the railings. The family will wake at 10 to a dining room that never happened. You are the never happening. It is the same work as every morning, only more of it, and it must be done faster, and it is on those mornings that the machine shows you what it is made of. Miss Kearney in the doorway at 5 with her lamp, reading the wreckage like a page and dealing it out in 6 flat sentences, no more, and the whole female half of the house moving through the rooms in the dark like a tide that has been given instructions. It is on one such morning after, the 2nd week of December, the frost ferns thick on the inside of the dining room windows, that the master breaks the 4th wall of your world for the first time. You knew his exception already. The whole basement knows it. The master is an early riser by constitution, the one member of the family who is a man who made his first money young and rural, and has never fully unlearned farm time, and 2 or 3 mornings a month he'll be down at 6:30, hours before his class, to walk to his bank offices like a clerk while the avenue's other masters sleep. The manuals have a rule even for him. The family's early riser is to be served silently and otherwise unattended, his fire first, his coffee laid in the study, and the morning machine is to flow around him like water around a stone. Fine. Rules hold when everyone keeps to their side of them. But this particular morning his step is on the stair at 6:10, 20 minutes early, soundless on the runner, and you are still in the study, on your knees at his grate, mid-fire, the flame just walking up the paper, as caught as a girl can be caught. You do what the wall drill built you to do. Up, back, face to the bookshelves, hands folded on the black-lead brush, still as furniture. His step crosses the room behind you, stops. There is a silence of a length you will be reconstructing at the servants' table in your head for weeks. And then, this has never happened. In your 13 months under this roof, it has simply never happened. The voice, addressed unmistakably to the back of your cap. Carry on, it's too cold this morning for ceremony. 4 words and a clause. You turn, you have to. A direct instruction outranks the wall, and kneel and finish building his fire with your ears roaring, while the master of the 2nd richest house on the block stands at his own window in his overcoat, watching 5th Avenue emerge from the dark exactly as you watch it every morning, and says nothing further at all. But as the coals take and you gather your box, he looks down at the young fire with a kind of practical respect, the way men of his first trade look at weather, and says, to the fire, or to the window, or possibly, though you will never be sure, to you. My father laid his own fires, 60 years ago now, and that is all. You are through the baize door before your face catches up with your heartbeat. Below stairs when you report it, because you must, that is the law of the table. Danny is for once silent with awe. Thomas is elaborately unimpressed in the manner of a man who is extremely impressed. And Mr. Greer says only, in the tone of a closing door, the master spoke. You answered with your work. Correct. But you notice Miss Kearney looking at you for a long second over the teapot, and you will come to believe later that she filed the incident where she filed everything, under weather signs. A master who will suspend ceremony against the cold is a fact about a house. Facts about a house are what you keep, against the morning you need them. That and one more winter fact, quieter and worse. Through January the cold settles into Mr. Greer's right hand and stays there. The tremble is no longer a first thing in the morning matter. You have seen the coffee tremor in the pot's own reflection at the breakfast laying, seen him set down the carving knife at the servants' dinner, and take it up again left-handed as if he had merely thought better of his grip. Thomas now does the pantry's fine work most mornings, the counting, the chamois, the laying out, under the fiction, maintained by every soul in the basement with the discipline of a state secret, that Thomas is being trained. And here is where the shop window footman earns what I promised you in April he would earn. Thomas, who checks his own beauty and knife blades, has understood the fiction perfectly and holds it. He asks questions he knows the answers to so that Mr. Greer may correct him. He fumbles deliberately once a week so that Mr. Greer may sigh and demonstrate. He is turning his own apprenticeship into the old man's dignity, and doing it so well that it took even Miss Kearney a month to see it. And when she did, you were in the passage. You saw. She stopped him with a touch on the sleeve and said nothing whatever, which from Miss Kearney is a decoration for valour. So stands the house at the end of February 1888, the cup ticking in its flannel, the butler's hand failing behind a screen of courtesies, Danny grown an inch, drilling for a livery he hasn't been promised, Josie reading her first reader by the range at night, lips moving, Sal arriving through the hard mornings with frost on his collar and the heel of bread going into his coat, the machine's smallest, most punctual heartbeat, and the winter itself, strange and unsettled, running warm and cold by turns, a mild spell in early March that has the papers talking of an early spring, robins reported in the park, the first crocuses up along the carriage drives, and Mrs. Fenwick standing at the area door on the evening of Saturday the 10th of March, looking at a soft grey drizzling sky over the mews and saying, "You will remember this all your life," the way she said it to nobody, drying her hands on her apron. I don't like a warm March. A warm March is a door left open. On Sunday, the 11th of March, 1888, it rains all day. Warm rain, spring rain, the gutters run, the girls coming back from Mass carry their skirts. The evening paper, quoting the Weather Bureau's indications out of Washington, promises for Monday. Colder, fresh to brisk westerly winds, fair weather. Keep that sentence, frame it. Of all the artefacts of that week, none is more perfectly preserved than the official forecast, fair weather. Published while, out over the Atlantic, two storms were folding into each other like hands closing. You go up your 63 steps to the attic that Sunday night with the rain loud on the roof, bank your candle, say the rosary's last decade lying down, a habit your body keeps whether you attend to it or not, and you sleep, 19 years old, the machine schedule laid out in your muscles for the morning. 4:30, the knock, the boxes, the grates. In the walls the pipes tick as the rain cools. Sometime after midnight the sound of the rain changes. Nobody hears it change, but you will always, ever after, swear that some part of you heard it, the moment the drumming went soft and the softness began to hiss. The wind had gone round to the northwest. The temperature was falling like a dropped stone, and on the other side of the dark, waiting for the milk wagons and the hall boys and the housemaids of the whole roaring eastern seaboard, stood the morning of Monday, the 12th of March, 1888. The knock comes at 4:45, same as always. What is not the same is the sound underneath the knock, a long seamless roar like the sea heard from inside a shell, with a grain in it, a hiss, as if the sea were made of sand. The attic is bitterly, abnormally cold, and there is snow on the inside of the windowsill. Inside, a fine white drift, an inch deep, driven through the sash's invisible seams by a wind that has found gaps no winter in the house's memory ever found. Josie is sitting up in her bed with her blanket at her chin looking at it. Neither of you says anything. You dress with fingers that won't close properly, and you go down the 63 steps into a house whose voice you've never heard before. The whole tall stone body of it is humming, a deep organ note in the flues, and behind every shutter on the west side something is scouring the stone like a file. In the kitchen, Danny stands at the area door with the bolt half drawn and he cannot open it. Not, it is stuck. It cannot be opened. Through the frost-furred glass of the area window you can see why. The area, your area, the 8-foot stone well between the basement and the street, with its steps and its railings and its ash barrels, is gone. Snow stands in it to above the door's midpoint, packed hard as sand by the wind, and more is arriving not as falling snow, but as a horizontal grey torrent, a river of it running down Fifth Avenue at what you will learn was better than 40 miles an hour, in a temperature that had fallen more than 30 degrees since midnight and was still falling. Mrs. Fenwick arrived at the foot of the stairs, looks at the door and at the window, and says, in the voice she uses for ruined sources and acts of God, one word, well. And then, because she is who she is, Josie, the range, will want it strong. Here is what has happened overnight, though no one in this basement will know the shape of it for days. 2 storms have collided over the Atlantic and swung north along the coast, and the warm, sprawling city of Saturday's crocuses has been struck by a true blizzard. The blizzard, the one the books will simply call the Great Blizzard of 1888, or the White Hurricane. It is snowing from Chesapeake Bay to Maine, and listen to what stops all at once on that Monday morning in the greatest city of the hemisphere. No milk. 5 minutes to 5 comes and goes, and for the first morning in your 500 mornings, no iron tires, no can lids, no low voice to a horse. The milk trains are dead in drifts north of the Harlem River, and the city that drinks 1 million quarts a day will be dry by Wednesday. No market wagons. Washington Market is a snowed-in ruin of abandoned stalls. No ice, no coal sledges, no florist's cart, no post. The mails give up by mid-morning. The elevated trains stall between stations with their fires dying, and thousands of clerks and shopgirls sit trapped in the cold cars above the streets, while enterprising men with ladders charge a quarter for the climb down. The telegraph and telephone wires, that famous filthy overhead forest of poles and cross-arms that darkens every downtown street, come down in webs and whips across the avenues, and by afternoon New York cannot speak to Boston, to Washington, to anywhere. The modern city, the electric miracle of the age, is as cut off as a ship in mid-ocean. The Weather Bureau's own instruments will record the wind and the cold faithfully all day, recording a fair weather forecast being buried alive. None of that is in the kitchen yet. What is in the kitchen is simpler and older, and it is the reason this chapter of the story exists. The machine looks at the storm, and the machine holds. Miss Kearney comes down at 5 with her lamp and her keys and does what she does to a wrecked dining room, but to a continent's weather, reads it and deals it out flat. The tradesmen will not come. None of them assume it. Days, not hours. Therefore, inventory. Mrs. Fenwick to reckon the larder in meals, not in stores. Danny to reckon the coal, actually reckon it, in scuttles, with the tally slate. The fires above stairs to be cut to 3. The kitchen range, the master's study, the library where the family will be gathered. 1 fire to live by instead of 12. Exactly the arithmetic every great house and every tenement on the island is doing in this same hour, at their very different starting sums. The water pipes to be run at a thread all day, every tap against freezing, lamps and candle husbanded, and the household to breakfast now, properly, hot and full, because, and she says this with her gloves already on, in the tone of a woman stating the day's first standing order, cold begins in an empty stomach. We will not be feeding the storm from 1 Danny comes back up from the cellar with the slate and the first real fear of the morning on his face, doing sums with his lips moving. The coal sledge that should have come Saturday did not come. The next was due Tuesday, and what is under the sidewalk is perhaps 2 days of the house's ordinary winter appetite, or 6 days, 7, of 3 fires ruthlessly kept. You watch Mr. Greer take the slate, check the boys' figures, and initial the corner as gravely as a bill of lading, and you understand suddenly that this is what all of it was for. The counted forks, the 5-minute clock, the liturgy of small exactnesses. It was drill. It was 47 years of drill for a morning when the numbers would be real. And the family wakes into it. That is the strangest seam of that whole strange day. 9 o'clock arrives, and for the first time in the history of your service, the 2 houses inside this house wake into the same world. There are no chafing dishes. There is no shad, no cream, no roll wrapped in a napkin. There is porridge, the last of the milk shared out with the nursery of the family next door, whose kitchen flooded when a pipe burst at dawn, and whose servants came through the connecting yard wall deep in snow, and were taken in by Mrs. Fenwick without one syllable of triumph, which cost her something, for their cook has been her sworn rival since before your time. The mistress's tray goes up with honest tea on it, and at 9:30 the master himself comes down past the baize door, down the back stairs his foot has never once touched, into the kitchen in his overcoat, and stands at the foot of the stairs in the raw-lit gloom among his own astonished servants like a captain come down to the engine-room and asks Mr. Greer, plainly, as one man of accounts to another, how do we stand, and what is wanted? And Mr. Greer, 61, his right hand deep in his coat pocket where it can shake unwitnessed, gives him the state of the house in 90 seconds, coal to candles, and the master listens the way you are told he listens on Wall Street, nods once and says, "Keep your own fire up in this hall as the first of the 3. The house runs on this room." He's gone again before anyone remembers to be invisible. Invisible is safe, Josie always says. It turns out there is a weather in which nobody can afford it. Your own war, all that Monday and the worst Tuesday after it, is the library chimney. Of course it is. The one flawed flue in the house, and the storm finds it the way storms find everything. The gale is nominally out of the northwest, but in the stone canyon of the avenue, it is out of everywhere at once, slamming around the mansion blocks in eddies, and the library fire. One of the 3 fires, the family's fire, the fire the mistress and the children are living beside with the wind screaming at the shutters, begins twice on Monday and 5 times on Tuesday to choke and breathe its smoke backward into the room. And so it is you, the 3rd housemaid, who spends the great blizzard on and off your knees at that hearth with a lit newspaper held high in the throat of the flue. Miss Kearney's trick, the contraband knowledge, passed hand to hand down a line of women nobody wrote about, warming the cold plug of storm air until the draught turns and catches, and the chimney remembers its manners, while behind your back, close enough to touch, the family sits wrapped in lap robes watching. Not through you, at your hands. The mistress, whose penciled cards have run this house for the whole 16 months of your service without once containing a name, asks, on the 5th or 6th performance over the wind, "How do you know to do that?" And you, kneeling face to the fire, flannel and newspaper and black lead, make the only answer there has ever been, which is the whole of this story in 6 words. It's my great mum, I know it. Tuesday, the 13th of March, is the bottom of it. 6 above 0 at dawn, in a march that had crocuses, the wind still hammering, the snow now 20 inches 2 feet, with drifts against the row's north faces that reach the parlour windows, and on the side streets, where the canyon wind piles all it steals from the avenue to the second stories, men will step out of second-floor windows onto packed snow this week, and photographs will be taken to prove it to grandchildren. From the box-room window at the front of the attics at first light, you and Josie look down on the impossible. Fifth Avenue with nothing moving on it. No wagon, no hansom, no stage, no hoofprint. A single line of holes down the middle of the white where one man passed at dawn, chest deep, and the wind already sewing them shut. The city has simply stopped, and yet, look down the row from the attic, north and south, at the chimneys of the palaces, and beyond the yards the tenement stacks of the side streets alike, and count what you can see against the flying grey. Smoke. Thin, beaten sideways but rising. Here, there, the next roof, the next. Every one of those threads is a fire that did not go out in a city where nothing else works at all. And every one of those fires is somebody's Danny, somebody's Fenwick, somebody's numb-handed girl who came down her own 63 steps into the dark and the roar and kept it lit. Nobody will ever list their names. There is no plaque anywhere in New York for the servants who kept the houses alive in the storm of '88. This tonight is as close as they get. The heel of bread sits on the table all Monday. All Tuesday, untaken. Mrs. Fenwick does not put it away, and nobody at that table is fool enough to say the name Sal out loud. A boy of 12, on open streets, in a wind that was killing grown men within sight of their own doorsteps. The count of the dead in the city alone will run toward 200 before the papers stop revising it. On Tuesday night, Mrs. Fenwick wraps the heel in a cloth and sets a second one beside it, and says, "To the range in Yorkshire that shall thank the boy not to make a habit of lateness." Nobody laughs because it isn't a joke. It is a woman leaving a lamp in a window in the only language she has. And on Wednesday, the 14th of March, the wind dies in the night the way a fever breaks, and you come down at 4:30 into a silence so total it wakes you better than the knock did. And at 7, with the whole avenue blinding gold and monstrous under 3 days of sun-struck white, there is a scrabbling at the area's snow wall, and a tunnel no wider than a terrier appears at the top of it, and down through it, boots first, gap-toothed, blue-lipped, furious at the state of the streets and demanding to know if anyone here wants eggs because he has 6, comes Sal. Mrs. Fenwick feeds him until he can't speak. Then she boxes his ear, gently, the way you'd close a door you were glad of, and then she feeds him again. And with that the storm is over, and the story can breathe out. So can you. What's left of this night is all descent. The thaw, the accounting, the small debts of the winter coming due and being forgiven, one quiet morning at a time, down to the last morning of all. There is nothing ahead now but the slow return of ordinary time. Let it come slowly. That's what it did. The digging out takes the better part of a week, and the mornings of that week are their own strange season. A 5th season, never on any calendar, that everyone who lived through it will remember as a kind of holiday declared by catastrophe. The city comes back to life not from the top down, but from the bottom up, shovel by shovel, and for once the whole island can see plainly what your basement has always known. Everything runs on the people who lift things. Italian gangs hired by the 1,000-cut canyons down the avenues and cart the snow to the rivers. The horse cars creep first, then the stages. The elevated unfreezes, and on the East River on the Tuesday of the storm the impossible had happened. The river froze over, and men walked across the ice from Brooklyn to Manhattan, hundreds of them, between the bridges, until the tide turned and broke the flow and set several dozen of them adrift on rafts of ice to be rescued by tugs, which is the most New York sentence ever written. The river freezes once in a generation, and within the hour there are men out on it, and within 2 some of them need saving, and within a week all of them are claiming they'd do it again. In your house the machine walks itself back to ordinary by the same small degrees. Wednesday 3 fires, Thursday 6, by the following Monday all 12, and the coal sledge grinding up to the brass lid in the pavement like a returning ship. The milk wagons resume their 5 to 5 liturgy, and you lie awake the first morning waiting for them the way you'd wait for a friend's step. The florist's cart returns too, and Danny reports with dark satisfaction that the roses look humbled. And on the Thursday after the storm, you will keep the date as long as you keep anything, the 22nd of March, 1888. The chocolate tray comes down at 9 with the usual pencilled card of orders for Miss Kearney, the dinner, the carriage, the linen, and at the bottom, beneath the orders, in the same fast slanting hand, stands one line more, the line that in 16 months has never come. Tell them, from the family, it was well done. All of it. Miss Kearney reads the card at the foot of the stairs as she reads every card. Then she carries it into the servants' hall where the whole below-stairs world is at its 20 minutes of breakfast, and hands it. This is the part you'll tell to grandchildren who won't understand a word of the context. To Mr. Greer, who stands and puts on the spectacles he uses only for documents of state, and reads the mistress's line aloud to the table in exactly the voice he would use to announce a duke. 14 words, one of them well, one of them done. It is the only written acknowledgement any of you will ever receive from up those stairs as long as you serve there. And here is the truth of that morning, the truth this whole channel exists to keep. It was not enough, and it was everything. And both of those facts are facts. The card ends up, Danny will show you years of Sundays later sworn to secrecy, pressed flat under the tally slate in the butler's pantry, where Mr. Greer keeps the papers a house is actually made of, the cup you carry out yourself, in the flannel on the last Saturday of March. You'd rehearsed the confession all winter, and in the event it comes out in one breath, in the housekeeper's parlour at 6 in the morning, with the flannel bundle set on her table like evidence at an inquest, the ruck in the drugget, the door jab, the tick, the crack, the 5 months behind the curtain hooks. And then you stand there, 20 years old now. Your birthday went by in the storm week unnoticed, even by you, waiting for the word careless, and for the letter that word lives in, and for the whole American arithmetic to come down. Miss Kearney unwraps the flannel, turns the cup once, sets it down, and then she takes the ring of keys off her belt, selects the second smallest, unlocks the deep-bottomed drawer of her own dresser, and lifts out, one after another, wrapped in flannel and old lawn and a stocking with no mate, a Wedgwood plate riveted like a mended saucer-pen, a crystal salt in 2 pieces, a Meissen shepherdess missing one arm at the shoulder, and four other cups. Some of the wrappings are yellow with age. One is wrapped in a pattern of calico they have not milled since before you were born. The drawer of sins, she says, in the flat Ulster voice, watching you understand it. 30 years of it, she tells you, hers and other girls both, some of them women running houses of their own now, one of them dead. Every housemaid breaks, every single one. The hands are mortal and the marble is not, and any housekeeper who claims her girls break nothing is running her house on fear and lies, in that order. The sin, Buckley, was never the crack. Porcelain forgives you nothing, but porcelain is not the household soul. The sin is the hiding, and even that she folds the flannel back over your sieves with the shepherdess and the rest. Even that is not the girl's sin, but the house's. For we have built a world, Buckley, where a chipped cup can eat a whole life, and then we act astonished that girls learn to bury the pieces. The cup will go to the menders. There is a man on 4th Avenue who rivets porcelain for the trade so finely the family will never know. It will cost you $1.10, and it will be stopped from your April wages, and the entry in her book will read, in Miss Kearney's upright hand, breakage, ordinary wear, which is what the entry has read, you realise dizzily, doing the arithmetic of that drawer, for 30 years of girls like you. And the next time you break a thing in my house. She's already relocking the drawer, already the poker again, the parlour already over. You will bring it to me the same morning and save us both a winter. You cry in the linen closet afterward, briefly, with your face in the third best tablecloths at 6:20 in the morning, and you would be hard put to say what for. Then you wash your face at the scullery tap and go up and do the curtains. The sun that morning comes into the drawing room in bars and half bars, warm and rationed, precisely as prescribed, onto silk that shows not one stripe of fading, and for the first time you understand the curtain card and the sun schedule, and the whole strict apparatus of the woman's life for what it is. Nothing in this house has ever been allowed to fade on Miss Kearney's watch, least of all the girls. The clock explains itself that same week, and it is Danny who finally asks. Danny, emboldened by the storm the way the whole basement is quietly emboldened by it at the Sunday breakfast, into an ordinary silence. Why is the hall clock kept 5 minutes fast, Mr. Greer? And the table goes very still, because 30 years of servants have wondered and not asked. And Mr. Greer looks at the boy for a moment over the teapot, and then, instead of the closing door voice, he takes out his own watch, opens it, lays it flat on the table where the whole hall can see the honest time, and tells them, "A house in England," he says, without naming it. "The year 1840. A butler's boy of 13, which is to say himself, sent at a run across the park with a master's letters to catch the morning mail coach, and arriving 4 minutes late, the coach gone, the letters, which held a bid, a contract, a family's whole season of income, dead in his hand. The boy was not dismissed. That is the point of the story," he says, and he says it straight at Danny with the watch lying between them like a small gold verdict. The coachman was dismissed, for the clocks in that house had been left, through nobody's particular sin, 7 minutes slow, and the wrong man paid for the minutes. "I have kept every clock in my charge 5 minutes fast for 40 years, Mr. Greer says, closing the watch, "so that no one under me shall ever again be punctual and ruined in the same morning. The 5 minutes, boy, are the house's mercy. Eat your breakfast." And he pours his tea, with his right hand, which shakes now openly before all of them, because sometime in that White Week the old man stopped hiding it. There are things a storm makes pointless, and Thomas, without a flicker, steadies the cup at exactly the moment it wants steadying, the way he now does 20 times a day, so smoothly that it looks like ceremony. It has become ceremony. That is Thomas's masterpiece, and the whole basement knows it, and the two of them will run the pantry on that unspoken treaty, the old man's knowledge, the young man's hands, for as long as this story can see. And because this channel keeps its accounts square, here is what the record itself says became of that week, out beyond your area railings, in the city of fact. The blizzard of 1888 killed some 400 people from the Chesapeake to New England, roughly half of them in New York City. Among them, in the end, it counted the most famous pedestrian of that Monday, Roscoe Conkling, former senator of New York, the great Maine of the Republican Party, who walked the miles from his Wall Street office up to Union Square through the worst of it, collapsed in the drifts near the square's edge, was hauled out, seemed to rally, and died of the aftermath on the 18th of April, 5 weeks after the storm. The papers made his walk a legend before his lungs made it an obituary. The city, humiliated by its own dangling nervous system, finally forced the telegraph and telephone wires underground. The work of burying them began in earnest within the year, and the poles came down block by block like a felled forest, so that the clean, bare sky over a modern Manhattan street is, in a real sense, a monument to that storm, and the sight of the elevated trains dead on their trestles, with the whole city's business freezing inside them, put iron into an argument New York had been having lazily for decades, that a serious city must put its trains where the weather cannot reach them. The men who pushed the subway through in the years that followed reached again and again for one exhibit, and the exhibit was March of 1888. When New Yorkers finally rode underground in 1904, they were riding in part on that Monday morning. That is what the storm did to the famous. What it did in your basement no newspaper recorded, and the manuals, which resumed commanding serene as ever within the week, never mentioned it at all. The timetable does not have a column for the morning the machine met the storm and held, but you were there. Now, in the only way that matters at this hour of the night, so were you who are listening. And as for the girl whose hands you have been wearing, whoever she was, whoever all of them were, the hundreds of her scattered up and down that vanished avenue, history closed over her the way the snow closed over the wagon ruts, quietly, completely, and without ever once asking her name. This story was her plaque. It is the only kind her kind ever got. April comes back. It has to. It always does. That is the deepest law the morning knows, deeper than the manuals, deeper than the bells. The snow goes off the avenue in grey ebbing shoals. The park 2 blocks north turns the exact green it turned the morning this story started. And one mild Tuesday you climb to the housemaid's closet on the 4th floor and take down the jelly moulds for Easter with nothing behind them but dust and curtain hooks. And you stand on the stool for a moment in the quiet, feeling the lightness of that shelf like a change in the weather of your own chest. The mended cup is back in the china closet, riveted so finely you have to know the crack to find it. You know the crack. You will always know the crack. That is fair. We are all of us riveted somewhere, and the house goes on using us, and the chocolate goes on tasting the same. The year has come all the way around, and you can feel the circle closing morning by morning in the small print of the timetable. The study grate goes cold for the season. Then the morning rooms, each dead fire an hour handed back, spring paying its debts. The sun card in the pantry rotates to its summer face, and you are back behind 6 feet of lion silk at 7:30, easing the rings along the poles, letting April onto the avenue by the inch. Word comes down through the usual channels, which is to say Danny, who knows everything by way of the grooms, who know everything first, that this summer, when the house is packed for Newport, there will be a second footman's place made, and a livery cut down to fit. The master, it seems, asked Mr. Greer one question in the storm week. Who counted the coal? And Mr. Greer said the name, and that was that. Danny has not been told yet. Danny, in consequence, is the only person in the basement who does not know, and mornings, lately, the whole servants' table has the suppressed shine of a room full of people, keeping one good secret at a boy who once kept the whole house's plate safe with his sleeping body. Let them have it a few days more. Some news deserves a good table. Josie has finished the first reader and started, God help the two of you, on the newspaper, a column a morning sounding out the shipping notices to the sugar bin, arrived, cleared, sailed. Her finger under the words, her lips going, the range ticking beside her like approval. And your envelope still goes to Claire on the first Monday of the month. But since January it has gone with a difference you have told nobody about. A second, smaller fold of paper inside it, addressed in your own improving hand, in which you have begun, slowly, a few lines a month, at the kitchen table after the letters lesson, because teaching Josie taught you what you were, to write your mother the mornings, the milk wagons, the copper pans, the roof, the storm. Somewhere in a stone-floored kitchen in County Clare, read aloud by a turf fire to neighbours who will not believe a word of the flour bill, this story is already being told for the first time, in the present tense, by the person it happened to. Everything since, the books, the archives, this voice in your dark room 140 years on, is only the echo of envelopes like that one. And the mornings themselves go on, and go on being yours. That is the thing the year leaves you with, the quiet astonishment under the fatigue. 4:30 will never again be only an ache. You know what it is now. It is the hidden half-day. It is the hour when the palace tells the truth, when the marble is cold and admits it, when the fires are born and the bread is born and the sun is rationed out by girls in stocking feet, when the whole gorgeous, impossible avenue lies stripped of its performance and belongs entirely to the people who make it possible. 9 o'clock will take it all back every morning forever. 9 o'clock never knew what it had. Danny gets his news on the last Sunday of April, and it is done, because Mr. Greer has 47 years of knowing exactly how a thing ought to be done, with full honours at the servants' breakfast, before the whole table. The boy comes in late from the boot hole, sleeves rolled, hands black to the wrist as yours, and stops dead in the doorway, because laid over the back of his chair, brushed and squared and waiting, is a footman's livery, cut down through April by a tailor on 3rd Avenue in what the entire basement has pretended for 3 weeks was nobody's business. Dark blue with the house's buttons, sized for a boy who has grown an inch since Christmas and will need the cuffs let down by autumn. Nobody says anything. That is the style of the house. The great things arrive in silence like the water at the doors. Danny looks at the coat, and at Mr. Greer, and back at the coat, and his mouth works twice with no sound in it, and then he puts on gravity the way he has watched Thomas put on gravity for 2 years, shoulders back, chin level, the whole liturgy, and it holds for very nearly 4 seconds before it caves in, and he's only 14, and grinning like a split melon with his eyes too bright, and Josie is thumping the table, and Mrs. Fenwick is saying something about more tea in a voice that has gone suspiciously Yorkshire thick. Mr. Greer waits out the noise like weather. Then, a footman, Mr. Daniel. The Mr. lands on the boy like a knighthood, rises at 6. You will find it a scandalous indulgence. See that it does not soften you. And Thomas, reaching over without a word, adjusts the lie of the collar on the chair back by a 1/4 inch, 2 fingers, the way you'd bless something. The plate safe will get a new night watchman from the agency. The pantry gets Danny. The morning machine, which eats its children's childhoods, does occasionally in its own stiff way pay them back. Sundays themselves deserve one page before this story lets you sleep, because Sunday was the one morning of the week built differently, and it was the nearest thing to gentleness the timetable knew. The family sleeps until 10 on Sundays, breakfast is at past, and so the machine runs at half speed, and the manuals actually commanded in the same print that scheduled the sun, that every servant have a church time by rota, turn and turn about, so the house was never empty of hands nor any soul left heathen for lack of scheduling. Your turn is early mass, and so on Sunday mornings, alone, in your good dark dress, you walk down Fifth Avenue at 6:30, down the middle of the empty sidewalk of the richest street on earth, past the sleeping palaces with their drawn blinds, 8 blocks to the great white cathedral at 50th Street, St. Patrick's, marble and new, its doors open before its towers are even finished, and you hear mass among housemaids and coachmen and cooks, the whole hidden half-day of the avenue gathered in one nave, all the black-stained hands folded in all the clean gloves, while their masters sleep in the houses they warmed on Saturday. The walk back is the best half-hour of your week. The avenue at 7:30 on a Sunday belongs to nobody at all. No wagons, no family, no bells but church bells. And you have learned to walk it slowly, on the outside of the sidewalk where the light is, like a woman who is somewhere she is expected and is in no hurry to arrive, which by then is simply the truth. And in the 3rd week of that April, the year does the last thing a year can do to you, the thing that tells you it is truly over. It hands you a beginner. A new 4th housemaid, hired ahead of the summer against the autumn's needs. 16, straight off the Queenstown boat, out of Galway, with one canvas bag and a paper with an address on it, and a way of flinching at doorways that you recognise the way you'd recognise your own handwriting. On her first morning she drops her black lead brush on the library's marble at 5 o'clock, and the crack of it in the silence nearly stops her heart. You watch her stand there rigid, waiting for the house to fall on her, and 18 months of your own mornings turn quietly over in your chest. So you teach her. What else is any of this for? You teach her the 4th step from the top of the 2nd flight, and how the drugget folds, and the sun card, and the sifting of the cinders, and which silences of Miss Kearney's are weather and which are law, and that the 5 seconds of warmth over a newborn fire are wages, and to take them. And on an east wind morning at the end of the month you take her to the library hearth, and you light a newspaper, and you hold it high in the throat of that flawed and famous flu, and you pass down the line, hand to hand, the trick that kept a family warm through the storm of the age, the contraband knowledge of women nobody wrote about, moving one generation further along its chain. Miss Kearney passes the doorway while you're mid-lesson. She does not stop, but you hear it, dry as a page turning from the corridor. Quite right. And late that same week she keeps you back a moment in the housekeeper's parlour, ledger open, pen capped, and tells you in 6 unadorned Ulster sentences that the head housemaid gives notice at midsummer to be married, that the 2nd step's up, and that when the family returns from Newport in October, the 3rd housemaid's map of grates will belong to the new girl, and the 2nd's floor, Buckley, will belong to you. $2 more a month. A better room, 1 flight down. The envelope to Claire will thicken by exactly the width of the difference. You say thank you, ma'am, in the voice the basement taught you, level as a laid cloth, and then you go up the 63 steps on legs you cannot entirely feel, and you stand a minute at the attic window, where the air-shaft slice of sky goes down into the house like a well of light, and you hold the sill. 19 no longer, and let the size of one small promotion in one vanished house on one demolished street fill you the way the harbour filled the immigrant boats. Learn everything she told you on the roof. Nobody knows a house like the girl who wakes it. It was all true, every word, and it was never really about the house. So the wheel stands ready to turn again. The trunks will come down from the box room in June. The chandeliers will go back into their bags. The family will pour away toward Newport on the evening boat. And the shrouded summer mornings and the roof and the reader will come round for the new girl the way they came round for you. But this story stops before the wheel does, because stories end and wheels don't, and because you, listening, are very close now to the edge of your own sleep, and one morning more is all we need. So let this be the last morning, and let it be an ordinary one, because the ordinary ones were the true ones. A Tuesday, say, late in April of 1888. The knock at 5:15. Josie's breathing, the floorboards cold, the cap, the 63 steps, Danny's fire talking to itself in the servants' hall, and the lying clock over the table promising its merciful 5 minutes to everyone who runs by it. The library in the dark, the drugget, the candle in the fender, the small hard circles of the brush, the milk wagons at 5 minutes to 5, iron on granite, the chink of the cans, the low voice to the horse, the match, the bloom of sulphur, the flame walk in the paper, 5 stolen seconds of warmth on your black hands. You are so tired. You're always so tired at this hour. It is the honest tax of the work, and tonight, wherever you're lying, you have paid taxes of your own, and you know exactly how her shoulders felt. So let her stand in for yours now. Let the scuttle down. Both hands. There. The fires are lit. All 7. Nobody saw. The water is at the doors, handles turned outward, cooling by the second, proof that someone was just here. The sun is in the drawing room, in bars and half-bars, exactly as prescribed, and the silk will not fade today either. The bread is out of the oven, and the heel of the loaf is on the table, and the boy will come for it, boots swinging, 12 years old and immortal, at 6:10. The way he comes every morning, the river of the world runs right. The house is warm, the house is fed, the house is safe, and the people it belongs to will wake at 9 and never know. And for once, just for tonight, that is not an injustice to be measured. It is only a quietness laid over a great tall stone house like snow, and you may put it down. You kept it lit. That was the whole of the work, and the work is done, and no bell will ring for hours. Warm enough, fed enough, safe enough. You have a bed and a blanket, and a door the wind cannot open. That is more than the avenue ever promised anyone below the salt. That is enough. It is enough. It is enough. Centuries will pass, 1.5 of them, from that April to this night. The avenue you know will change beyond recognition. The mansion itself will be gone within 40 years, sold and unbuilt stone by stone like nearly every palace on that street, its marble staircase broken for fill, its 63 steps leading nowhere, a department store's glass standing in the print of its foundations. The lion's silk will end in museums and rag drawers. The coal cellars will be filled in, the brass lids paved over, the bellboards ripped out with the walls, and the very trade of housemaid will thin away decade by decade until the whole hidden half-day survives only in manuals nobody commands with any more, and stories like this one. But people will still wake before the people they keep warm, still rise in the dark so that others can rise into comfort. still lay the fires and start the bread and carry the water in hospitals and kitchens and boiler rooms and bakeries, on night shifts and early shifts, in every city where the lights come on before dawn. Some things don't change. The hidden half-day doesn't change. It only changes hands. And somewhere tonight, in your own city, it is 4:30 for somebody. The furnace clicks on in your walls like a grate catching. The first delivery trucks are moving, iron tires gone to rubber, the same low errands down the same dark streets. The bakery 3 blocks from you is already warm, already flour dusted, already loud with the oven's talk. The whole morning machine of the world is kneeling at its hearths right now in the dark, so that the visible day can happen to the rest of us, so that you can do what you're doing at this exact moment, which is nothing, which is rest, which is the one luxury her avenue never learned how to buy. Take it then. She would want someone to finally take it. Let the house of your body bank its fires. Let the scuttle down. You have carried it far enough for one day. Let the clock in your dark run 5 minutes merciful. Let the doors of the long corridor close one by one, softly, the way trained hands close them. Let the milk wagons pass and the bells hold their tongues, and the snow lie deep and quiet over everything that hurt this year. Let your hands, whatever they carried today, whatever they are stained with, whatever they kept alive, let your hands stop first, the way hers started first. The rest of you can follow. It knows the way down. 63 steps, and the light gets warmer as you go. The family is asleep. The whole house, at last, both houses inside it, every floor, is asleep. And for once, for this one morning at the end of all her mornings, nobody has to wake before them. Not her, not you. The grates can stand cold until the sun does the work itself. The morning will be made by somebody else. You've earned this rest. Take it, and dream of whatever dreams may come. Good night.